Trump said the quiet part out loud. The US just admitted its coup playbook. Let's not pretend this is shocking. It's only shocking that someone finally said it out loud. Donald Trump has done what no US president in living memory has done. He's admitted publicly that the CIA has boots on the ground in Venezuela, that regime change is on the table, and that the United States is not just whispering in the dark anymore. It's broadcasting its intentions in broad daylight like a country that doesn't even feel the need to pretend, and that right there is the moment the mask slips. Not because the mask was ever particularly convincing, it wasn't, but because now they've stopped even wearing it. For decades, the United States has moved like a shadow through Latin America. It has funded coups, destabilized governments, trained death squads, installed leaders, toppled others, propped up dictators when they were useful, sanctioned Democrats when they weren't. Everyone in the region knows it, everyone outside the region suspects it, but America, oh America, never admits it. That's part of the choreography. Step 1, deny. Step 2, deflect. Step 3, deny some more. Step 4, bury the cables for 25 years and pretend it never happened until now. Trump just bulldozed that entire playbook with one of his signature boasts. And the world should be paying very close attention, not because coups are new, but because this one is wearing a name badge. The admission. In a speech, Trump openly stated that he has authorized covert CIA operations inside Venezuela. He's linked it to security threats, drug trafficking, and the old, tired, convenient claim that Venezuela is sending prisoners to the US. But between the lines? It's the old regime change doctrine. Same script, different decade. The Venezuelan government's reaction was immediate: outrage, accusations of foreign interference, condemnation of a blatant violation of sovereignty, and frankly, who can blame them? Even if you hate Maduro with every atom of your political soul, the principle matters. Trump's not even trying to cover his tracks. For decades, these operations were whispered, denied, left to investigative journalists, whistleblowers, and declassified documents. Now, they're part of the campaign trail language, something you brag about at rallies. Why? Because Trump's brand isn't subtlety, it's domination. He wants you to know he's the one kicking down doors. He wants applause for regime change. The history they pretend isn't there. Let's rewind, because this didn't come out of nowhere. This is not the birth of American interventionism. This is just the part where the empire stops pretending it's shy. Start with Guatemala, 1954. The CIA overthrows democratically elected President Jacobo Arbenz because he messed with the interests of the United Fruit Company. Official story: preventing communism. Real story: protecting business and power. Thousands die in the aftermath, and the country is plunged into decades of civil war. Then Chile, 1973. Salvador Allende, a socialist president elected through the ballot box, is toppled in a coup backed and greenlit by Washington. Enter Augusto Pinochet, a dictator whose regime murdered, disappeared, and tortured thousands. America didn't just support it, it trained the people who made it happen. Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, the list stretches like a scar across the hemisphere. The US armed and trained paramilitaries, it smuggled weapons and funded brutal campaigns, all while waving the banner of freedom. The Iran-Contra affair was not an anomaly, it was a leak in a dam that's always been cracking. And then there's Venezuela itself. It's not like this country just randomly showed up on Washington's radar. In the early 2000s, there was an attempted coup against Hugo Chavez. Washington was caught tiptoeing around it like someone whistling in a room full of broken glass. They didn't officially admit involvement, but they didn't exactly hide their glee either. Fast forward to 2019, Operation Gedeon, a failed paramilitary incursion into Venezuela, led by private military contractors. A clown show on the surface, but behind it was the usual cocktail: exile networks, contractors, whispers of US tolerance if not outright backing. And when it failed, America shrugged. This has always been the game. Intervene without saying you're intervening. Fund, destabilize, sanction, pressure, whisper. Then, if someone calls you out, you say, "Who? Me?" Trump just skipped the whispering. He's standing on the stage with a megaphone. Why this matters so damn much? Let's be brutally clear. This isn't just some policy difference. This is the President of the United States openly saying, "We're in your country trying to topple your government." That has massive implications, both legally and strategically. First, there's international law. The UN Charter forbids the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of another state. It's a cornerstone of the modern international system. Covert operations already skate the edges of that. Admitting it outright? That's not skating. That's cannonballing into the breach. Second, geopolitical blowback. Latin America has spent decades trying to claw its way out of the long shadow of US meddling. Every time Washington destabilizes a country, it pushes more people toward anti-American alliances, radicalization, or simply cynicism. When Trump boasts about CIA boots on the ground, he's not just targeting Maduro, he's alienating entire regions. Third, domestic accountability. Covert operations live in a legal grey zone. Congress often doesn't even get full briefings, but once a president admits it publicly, it's no longer plausible deniability. It's actionable. It can be investigated. It can be challenged. It can be used as a political and legal weapon. Fourth, the Overton window shift. The most dangerous thing here isn't just the operation itself, it's normalizing the language around coups. When a leader can boast about regime change and get a standing ovation, something in the political fabric has rotted. The double standard. This is where the hypocrisy hits like a hammer. Imagine, just imagine, if Keir Starmer got on national TV and said, "We've got MI6 agents in Argentina right now trying to overthrow their government." The backlash would melt Parliament, every paper would scream, the UN would be calling emergency sessions, international outrage would be deafening, Britain would be dragged over the coals. But when the US does it, business as usual. The headlines are, Trump doubles down on Venezuela like he's talking about a trade dispute. This isn't a trade spat, this is an act of aggression dressed up in political theatre. And people around the world see this double standard. When Washington points at another country and yells interference, the rest of the world remembers every single coup, every single toppled government, every single Latin American leader who never made it to old age because a bullet, a bomb, or a CIA-trained proxy got there first. The empire has always done this. What's new is the loudness. How we got here. Trump didn't invent the coup machine, he inherited it, and he's decided to operate it in broad daylight. America has always told itself a myth, that its foreign policy is rooted in freedom and democracy. But scratch that surface and what you find underneath is power, control and money. Control over oil, over trade routes, over ideological influence. Venezuela, with its massive oil reserves, was always going to be a target. It was never about Maduro as a man, it was about Venezuela as a prize. When Hugo Chavez nationalized oil and told Washington to get out of his house, America didn't forgive or forget. It squeezed. Sanctions. Isolation. Whispered plots. And now, Trump, a man allergic to subtlety, just said, "We're done whispering." This isn't incompetence. This is a deliberate shift. It's the empire saying, "We don't need your permission to topple your house anymore. We'll tell you we're doing it while we do it." Why open confession is a game changer. For years, deniability was the magic shield. It let the US intervene without technically intervening. It let politicians dodge accountability. It let allies pretend they didn't know. Now that shield is cracked, and with it comes a new kind of danger. By admitting it, Trump effectively invites escalation. Venezuela can now claim, with full justification, that it is under direct attack. That gives it legal grounds to retaliate, to seek alliances, to arm itself further. It feeds anti-American rhetoric like blood in water, and it drags other countries in. Nations like Russia, China, Iran, all of which have interests in Venezuela, now have an excuse to deepen their involvement, because if the US can intervene openly, so can they. Congratulations, we've just turned Venezuela into a chessboard again. The consequences at home. This isn't just a foreign policy bombshell, this is a domestic political grenade. A president can't just unilaterally launch covert operations without some kind of legal authorization. Yes, the CIA does covert ops. Yes, presidents have power, but there are supposed to be limits. Oversight. Legal frameworks. When Trump boasts about regime change, he's either confirming that Congress approved a shadow war or confessing to bypassing them entirely. Either way, it's terrifying, because it sets the precedent that a US president can declare coups like a brand new streaming service, one tweet away from destabilizing another nation. And if this is how he behaves while bragging, imagine what's happening where he's still whispering. The global reaction and the silence. What's even more disturbing is the silence. The UN, that glorified email service of international politics, will probably issue a strongly worded condemnation and do nothing else. No emergency force, no real accountability, just another statement added to the pile. The EU will express deep concern while sharpening its trade pencils. Some countries in Latin America will rage, others will privately sigh because they know the empire's reach too well, and some, quietly, will wait to see which way the wind blows before choosing a side. This silence is not neutral, it's complicity dressed as diplomacy, and it gives the US the exact green light it wants. If no one challenges the open confession, it becomes the new normal. The hypocrisy is global too. Because let's be honest, the US isn't the only country with blood on its gloves, but it's the one that wrote the manual. This is the same country that screams about Russian interference, about Chinese influence, about Iran backing militias, and it's not wrong to point those out, but hypocrisy matters. You can't brand yourself the defender of democracy while openly plotting regime change in another sovereign nation. Well, you can if you're the US, apparently. But don't expect the world to keep pretending your moral compass points north. Why this is dangerously normalized. This is how empires fall, not in a single cataclysm, but in a slow rot of their own mythology. Once upon a time, the US worked hard to hide its dirty work. Now it doesn't bother. That's what imperial decline looks like when power stops needing to pretend it's virtuous, and here's the real kicker. Some people will cheer it. They'll call it toughness, realism, finally telling the truth. But let's be clear, there's nothing brave about admitting to crimes when you know no one can stop you. That's not courage, that's impunity flexing its muscles. The Latin American memory. For Latin America, this isn't news, it's déjà vu with better lighting. Ask Guatemala about the cost of American liberation. Ask Chile, ask Nicaragua, ask Panama, ask Brazil during the Cold War. Every country has its ghost stories. Every country remembers the moment when American help meant soldiers on their streets, leaders in exile, or a body in a ditch. And here comes Trump, stomping into the room like a man who thinks history won't remember his name, but Latin America remembers everything. What happens next? Here's what comes next, and it's predictable because this movie has played before. The US will escalate its pressure, Venezuela will rally its allies and lean into nationalism, sanctions will tighten, covert operations will intensify, the humanitarian crisis will deepen, and Trump will keep boasting because politically it sells. The real cost? Ordinary people, civilians in Venezuela caught in the crossfire of geopolitics they didn't vote for and can't control. That's the thing about regime change. The ones shouting it from podiums aren't the ones starving when the power gets cut off. Imagine if it were us. Imagine this exact scenario flipped. Imagine the Prime Minister of another country announcing on live TV, "We've got intelligence agents inside the United States working to overthrow the government because we don't like the president." There would be war talk within hours, cable news would catch fire, patriotism would surge, words like terrorism and aggression would dominate the airwaves. It would be seen for what it is, an act of war. But when the shoe's on the other foot, it's business as usual. That's empire logic. Rules for you, none for me. Why we should all be paying attention. This isn't just about Venezuela. This is about what kind of world we're walking into. A world where coups are announced, not denied. Where covert operations are a campaign slogan, not a state secret. Where international law is just a suggestion and no one has the spine to challenge it. And here's the thing. What happens to Venezuela today will happen elsewhere tomorrow. Because power doesn't stop at one border. If it works once, they'll use it again. What needs to change? If the world had any backbone left, this would trigger a formal investigation at the international level. Immediate debate about sovereignty and aggression, clear red lines for external interference, actual consequences for admitted violations, but we know it won't because the US isn't just playing the game, it wrote the rules. And unless other countries grow a spine, Trump's open coup brag will become a blueprint, and we will all live in a world where the most powerful nations stop hiding their knives. Your outrage is valid. You're not crazy for being furious. You're not overreacting. This is a historical shift. For decades, the coup machine ran in shadows. Now it's being sold like a premium subscription package, and most people will shrug because they've been trained to think this is normal. But it's not normal. It's empire theatre. And like every empire before it, this story ends badly. Not just for the targets, but for the empire itself. Trump didn't invent the coup machine, but he's put it on stage with spotlights and a soundtrack. He's made the unsayable a talking point, and that should scare the hell out of anyone who still believes in sovereignty, democracy, or even just the rule of law. He's not a villain for confessing, he's a villain for doing it and knowing no one will stop him. This is the beginning of a new era, the era of public coups. And history tells us those are always uglier than the whispered ones, so the question isn't whether America meddles, it always has. The question is, now that they're admitting it, what will the rest of the world do, because silence now is consent. And if history teaches us anything, consent is the language of collapse. Not right, not left, just real.
Quote Flex, Daily Affirmations for Gaslighters. I'm not ignoring you, I'm preserving my energy. It's not manipulation if I believe it. My boundaries include lying.